Pearls versus turds. You want to drive on this one?
I will, sure. Pearls versus turds, 10 pearls, 41 turds, 21 ties. That's the current scoreboard. So we haven't
Oof.
seen a lot of pearls on the show, but Sam writes, I think I have a pearl. If you are setting up a logic game and there are two equally reasonable ways of setting it up, say assigning locations to people versus people to locations, glance at the acceptability question, which is presumably the first question, and see how they set it up. It'll be easier, at least for that question, to set it up their way.
So let's try to
Yeah.
personalize it a little bit.
Okay.
If the game was, we got 3 COVID vaccination sites and 6 people who are going to get the vaccine. You could list out the people and then assign them a location.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could list out the location and then make lists of people who were going to go to that location. I mean, that's Sam's specific example, is assigning locations to people or people to locations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's actually 2 good ways of setting that up. Maybe Sam's example isn't that great, because
Okay.
if each person is, well, I guess if people were going to go to multiple locations, then we might have a conundrum, right? But if each person is only going to go to one location, then I think it's pretty clear that you want locations to be the base and you want to build groups of people that are going to each of those locations. It would be kind of stupid to list out all 6 people and then one location for each one. You're not actually grouping if you do that, right?
Yeah.
I guess a better example would be if each person is going to go twice.
Because they have
You got
to
to get
get the
vaccinated
vaccine
twice.
Yep.
Let's say the government geniuses decide that you have to go to 2 different locations. you have to go to one location and then you have to go to a different location. I mean, in that case, I could see how I would be like, well, shit, should I do locations and then lists of people, or should I do people and then
there are 2 locations.
Location 1, location 2?
I think that would depend on whether locations could accept more than a certain number of people, right? Like if it's fluid, you might want to take that into account.
Yeah, I'm going to put in a provisional vote for Turd on this tip because I understand it, but for every time that it's helpful, I think there's going to be another time where it's actually going to hurt you. I think they intentionally lay out that list question or that acceptability question. I think they intentionally lay it out in convoluted ways sometimes.
I agree. I've actually thought of a game, or I actually can't think of it right now, but I know I've been in class and it's like, hey, you set up the game, Ben, and it's like different than the way the first question is set up. And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
I mean, it just makes a lot more sense. I have to kind of like work
Right.
through this first question, and it's a little frustrating to keep translating each of these answers back to my diagram and what they mean. But the rest of the questions are so much easier, and this game makes sense to me. And then I know there are other cases where, yeah, like it felt arbitrary and it was kind of nice that my diagram happened to match their setup, at least in that question. I think, yeah, I have to agree with you. I think there are cases where it helps and cases where it hurts. And so it's not advice that would be like, yes, do this. I would say that I actually, when you first read this in the agenda, like highlights, I was thinking that this advice was like, look at the first question to help you decide how to set up. I think I've told people that in the sense that if they don't have any clue what's going on, looking at a
Right.
question can give them like a concrete example.
Right.
And then you like, oh, okay. So really what they're trying to figure
But
out
then you
is
still don't have to set it up the exact way that they have it set up in that acceptability
exactly.
question.
Yeah. It's more just to like continue to understand and get your mind wrapped around what the hell is going on.
Yeah. I tend to use a rule
Mm-hmm.
as the deciding factor for how I'm going to set something up.
Yep.
Like there will be one rule or maybe a couple rules in combination, and I'll go, oh, okay, well, the easiest way to represent this in a diagram would be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll that's my deciding factor, not never just how they set up that acceptability question. Yeah, I got to say, Turd here. I would never recommend anybody do this, and I think it's going to hurt you probably more often than it's going to help you for most people, because I can just see students taking this too far and relying on it and going like, oh, okay, I know. I'm just going to always shit. I won't even read the rules. I'll just look at the acceptability question first, and then that'll be my setup. And then I'll read the rules. I mean, I know that's not what Sam specifically meant.
Oh, but people are going to do that. That's the thing. They're going to take this
Right.
advice and they're going to be like, "Oh, well, look at that first question. You got problems. When that first question is not an acceptability question, but you're the kind of test taker
Yeah.
that's looking to it, you're like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, well, this is a little strange, but okay." And then you have the other case where it's also not an acceptability question, or you could, I don't know what they mean by acceptability, but those questions where it's like only a partial list. It's not the complete list. It's only a partial list, but they give it to you
Yeah.
first. And
There's so many ways this can go
much different,
wrong.
but people are like, wait, okay. And then they're basing it off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would let this go. This reminds me of that one game. I mean, this is a tangent, but that one where it's like top to bottom. I don't remember what the topic was, but the answers like flipped it.
Oh, sure. They do shit like that all the time.
People
Yeah.
always like get so pissed by that one game because they're like top to bottom, and then in the answer A, it's
And
like
then,
lists bottom at the
yep,
top, and then
from
middle,
bottom
and
to
then
top.
and
Yep.
you're like, why the hell did they do that? And it's like, well, that person was whatever contractor wrote
Well,
that question was just pissed off that day. Is like, I'm gonna fuck with these people.
well, they want you to be able to solve the system, right? They always give
Yep.
you enough information that you can solve the system and you can answer every question perfectly. That said, they intentionally write the questions in such a way that if you don't read them carefully, you're going to get confused. That's why instead of every question saying which one of the following could be true, some of the questions say each of the following must be false except,
Except, yep, they could
right? I
ask
mean,
it in a clearer
they're
way, but
not
they don't. Yeah.
they're not trying to help you on the questions. And so that's
Yeah.
essentially what Sam's doing here, is looking to the question to help sort out the system. And I just don't know. Turd.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. And I mean, I guess we could also probably acknowledge that Sam sounds sophisticated enough
Mm-hmm.
that it might help him or her
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, whatever, if it's working for you, I think, this question is savvy enough that Sam probably understands what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But as an LSAT teacher, it's a turd. We would never recommend anybody do this. So it's no, turd.
Yeah.
All right.